All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Smirking Gun. This is Rob here. And after a little bit of a break, and it's early in the morning, by the way, it's not even 6 in the morning right now when I'm recording this, because I felt like if I didn't get this done now, I might not get it done at all. Plus, I needed to get into the Dungeons and Dragons headspace, so I'm trying to finish last night's Critical Role. And that got me in the right headspace. So, we are finally back talking about the D&D campaign that I'm in. There was some of the people couldn't be there, then I couldn't be there, and just everybody's schedules are different, and it's the reality of a D&D campaign, and that's something I also needed to learn. Like as excited as I am, everybody's got life and schedules and stuff, and so you're just trying to go, and we might not always be playing this campaign. Sometimes we might be doing a one shot or somebody else's thing, and those, you're not required to make it to any of those if you don't want. But we'll see what goes on. I'm having a good time with this group so far, and as you'll hear in this, we actually gained another person. For how long, I don't know. Hopefully for a while. Hopefully for the whole thing. So this is going to be a recap though of sessions 3 and 4. Because the third session we were minus Trail in the Woods, and that was for the second one actually, and Morsbit, and so they were going to go have their own little mission when they came back. So what happened in session 2 happens in session 2. So when we came back, though, Trail in the Woods was still. Sorry, I think I've finally started to get a bit of a cold. And I never really get sick. I don't consider this sick, but you can hear it in my voice. So for session 3, Morsvit came back, but we were still down Trail in the Woods. So for basically, to at least show what they were up to, they moved along, and she was kind of there, just in the background. And what they did on their little side quest, I kind of equate to like, it made me think of Rose and Finn going to Canto Bite in The Last Jedi, where they're just on their own, like in the middle of a thing while we're getting ready to do one thing, they shoot off to do something else, somewhere else, amidst high society, where basically turns into a fact-finding mission, a mission to get contacts, to find extra where we're gonna go, our next quests, things like that. Where there's a bunch of it's the nicer end of Salt Marsh, and Morsbit and Trail in the Woods are hired as security by this this elf named Elena, who's kind of a Galadriel-ish figure, I believe. Session 3 is a little harder to remember, so I'm going to do my best though. But there's been some assassination attempts on the town council, and we have a few people in this room. There's Manistrad Copperlocks. He's a dwarf. We have Henrietta Primwater, Alistair, Xenadros the Tiefling, and Jebediah. I'm trying to say. We also find out about Tinkin's. They find out about Tinkin's cave, but we already know about this. So, like what I said, basically they find some interesting things. They get some basically guys who want to use us for things, different levels. Now, back with the main group, we got Gemdo, who's not interested in working with Rebo. He's been looking for jobs, but all that's really around right now is just small time stuff. But we do some research into the mines that we were at, and we discussed the red crystal stuff, like because we're trying to find some kind of value in this cave. Like, what's the big deal? Tinkin wants this. We maybe want this, but there's this stuff called red crimsonite. No, it's a crimsonite. It's a red crystal. And as far as anybody knows right now, there's really just no use for it. Nobody has figured out what it's useful for. And I'm sure that like there is one. We have not cracked that code even after session 4. I think we're just all being like really lazy about it, to be honest, because it's just like if since none of us have the knowledge of this stuff, even my character who worked in a mine, or worked around a mine, doesn't know what this stuff is. So it's kind of difficult for us to, and I admit, like, because Gemdo's not into this, I kind of see why. But we do some research and we find out about this guy named Pax Jaegershield. And he's one of the dwarves that was, I believe, part of the original like mining company that was there. And there's this big purple worm that basically it got found in there, and that's why there's like all these corkscrew caverns all throughout this thing. So it's really not a mine. Well, it's become a mine. It's been repurposed, or it was like if it was a mine, it got more complicated when they woke up this purple worm. But we are going back to this cave. But before we do, Major Ziggy's character reaches out to his patron, Major Tom, who ends up giving him a magic staff that has 4 charges, can cause disadvantage, and has Starry Night. So it was really cool. It was really cool, and I wish I remember it a little bit better, but I'm sure we'll be talking to Major Tom before too long anyway. I asked Tinkin if he knows about any secret mines, myths, and places. And I'm also making sure that Hug, our little goblin friend, Hug, isn't getting high on this crimsonite. But we go back to what I'm basically calling the corkscrew caverns, where Hug offers to touch our weapons. Not everybody did it. I did, and I think Rennick might have. But as we go through these mines, and in this one, this is the session that made me realize afterwards that I needed to be more proactive. I was being way too into my character's like backstory and the pain and stuff that he's going through, forgetting that he's he's trained at what he does, and if he's out on an adventure, he's out on an adventure, and he's doing his thing. He's being his rogue self. So I felt like everybody, since some of us were into it and some of us weren't, and I'm still sitting there pretending like I don't know what I'm doing, but I know pretty much what I'm doing. I think I'm still a little hesitant. I was a little hesitant at the table, but you'll notice in session 4 that I'm much more proactive, because Morsvit had to move a lot of the party along in this, and there were a lot of interesting things that we could have gotten up to, but we just kind of chose not to. And I kind of let some of the table's influence do that, and my own, like, getting in my own head. But everybody knows, I think a lot of us get in our own heads. I'm not gonna say that I'm some special case, but I think I got in my own head a little bit about it. So we really just kind of moved around these caverns, found certain things, and didn't really do much about it. So this is a Morsvit kind of driven session. But I let Hug touch my weapon. Spoiler alert, it gave us +1 to our weapon damage, so that was awesome. But we didn't find that out until session 4. But there are, down here in these caves and caverns, some dwarf skeletons. Basically, the crew that was left there, that died there. Their reanimated bodies are just going through the motions, digging, and we keep hearing a voice from somebody who's like talking to us in our heads about, doing things for them. It's been happening a lot in this game so far. We've had a lot of people in our heads, real and imaginary. But long story short, I mean, we make it through the mines. We find a couple of like interesting areas, especially there's a room, big round room, and in the center is basically like if like in Harry Potter Order of the Phoenix, the thing that Sirius Black goes into. It reminded me of that. That area just reminded me of this like thing in the center, kind of a portal-y looking thing. And I think somebody tosses something into it, but we don't know what. And it just again felt wrong, felt off, voice coming out of it. Honestly, again, I as much as I was being hesitant and I thought I was being safe, I really felt like I was letting too much of the table influence. I really wanted to do something in this room and I didn't. But we passed it along and we ended up like entering a room where there were some cultists. There were traps that we triggered. Nobody got hurt. It was mostly like big boulders coming at us that we were able to get out of the way of. But by the end of the session, we entered a room that had cultists around it. In the center of the room are 3 cultists that are down and a floating like orb, a gem in the middle of the room. And then where those guys are, were all these like kind of little divots in the ground, little holes in the ground. And that's where we finished the thing. Now I do believe I got a potion of healing. And I think I also have a potion of invisibility that I got. And I'll have to clarify that. I think Morsfit got it and gave it to me. Me and my rogue self. So I think that's really it for session 3. And I know it was abbreviated, but we've never gotten into initiative. We didn't get into combat. We just spent a lot of time kind of complaining about being in the caverns, period. But session 4 is where things pick up, and we are here facing these cultists. They want this gem that's floating there. And apparently, because of my background, I recognize one of these guys by what he's wearing. He's all black. He's got 2 weapons and no armor. And his name is Chev Warwick. He is a hired assassin. He's a blade master, and basically he's like the guy that's a little bit better than me at what I do. At the table, I said this, but I said on a bad day, I would be able to beat him on a bad if he was having a bad day. But I also said, hey, anything can happen. Any given Sunday, any team can beat anybody else. Just depends on what happens, But that was cope. That was just total cope because I don't know. But he sneak attacks on Ziggy. Well, no, there's a we're kind of just all like, hey, what's going on? There's a guy. He's asking us. That's the who asks. Chev Warwick asks us to help him get the gem and just bring it along. And but it's kind of like I'm not really gonna call it a Mexican standoff or everybody just pointing guns at each other. But it was tense, and then this guy pops out from behind this basket and does a sneak attack on Ziggy for 6 points damage. So we're in initiative now. I roll initiative of 10, and Morsfit comes right out, uses Toll of the Dead, which, dang, I had... So Toll of the Dead is a necromancy cantrip. It takes an action. It has a range of 60 feet. And it's an instantaneous thing. And you point at one creature you can see within range, and the sound of a Dolores bell fills the air around it for a moment. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or take 1d8 necrotic damage. If the target is missing any of its hit points, it instead takes 1d12 necrotic damage. So that's what he does, but it fails, unfortunately. Two cultists attack me after we tell them we're not getting the gem for them. I am attacked twice, hit once for 2 points of damage. I attack a cultist with 22 and 6 points of damage. Now, this is what I kind of failed to do straight up, is I should have introduced Harden, who is he was gonna the guy who came into play. This character was gonna be a rogue, but he switched it to a elf bard. And so he joined the party. What we basically retconned was that there was a human with the original party that was with Tinkin. And we just retconned it into this guy that they thought he was a human, but he was really an elf, and he survived with Hug, and he's here now with us. Now, he then decides to try Vicious Mockery. Vicious Mockery, being another cantrip, it's a level 1 cantrip, has a range area of 60 feet. It is a wisdom save. It's where you unleash a string of insults laced with subtle enchantments at a creature you can see within range. If the target can hear you, though it need not understand you, it must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or take 1d4 psychic damage and have disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of its turn. Okay. So he tries Vicious Mockery. Vicious Mockery being a string of insults laced with subtle enchantments at a creature you can see within range. If the target can hear you, though it need not understand you, it must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or take 1d4 psychic damage and have disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of its next turn. But he does fail at that. So, okay, my recording got a little off, so I'm not sure how much I put in there, but I'm going to assume that I already did this. And I was going to talk about Eldritch Blast, but now I'm not so sure how much I've already talked about. So Eldritch Blast is another cantrip, has a range of 120 feet, has instant, it's ranged, and it has force damage. It's a beam of crackling energy that streaks towards a creature within range. Make a ranged spell attack against the target. On a hit, the target takes 1d10 force damage. The spell creates more than one beam when you reach higher levels. But he also fails. So, oh my gosh, so I'm starting to see this now from the outside in. No wonder, because later on there, somebody was saying that I was rolling like a beast. Or no, and he's like, you're rolling like an animal. Because, yeah, if everybody's trying and failing here at the beginning. But that's D&D, everybody. So Gemdo tries to put 2 guys to sleep and succeeds. That's the second time he's used a sleep spell that has worked for us. Earlier, he did it on some wolves that we were able to take out pretty easily. Tinkin then attacks and kills the guy I hit previously. Did I even say that I attack a cult? Yeah, I put that in there. Morsvit kills another with a short sword. And that's the end of combat, because the one guy leaves and the guy who did the sneak attack, he takes off. And so we're sitting there with 2 guys asleep and 2 of them dead. So we decide, I tell them we should toss one of the sleeping cultists at the gem. So we pick him up, Somebody else does, bigger character since I'm a halfling. Um, we toss the body. He passes through the gem, and spikes come out and kill the guy that was asleep. Gemdo uses Mage Hand, and it kind of goes through it, so it's not really there. Hug goes through. He can go through the trap because he knows this whole thing. I tell him to go through these guys' pockets, and he finds a vial of red viscous liquid. Um, that and basically Chev told us, this guy, the assassin that's down there that suddenly wants us to work for him, told us to move the gem. Gem is the key to this dwarven door. But after some, I mean, the thing has been passed through. So this gem is an illusion. When I go over to the last cultist and I put my dagger to his throat, and we wake him up, but he's not giving anything up. This guy's ready to go down with the ship. And then I just kill him. We check the basket that's in the room. There's some crimsonite in it, reddish gems. And I go through the door after Mage Hand opens it. Now, it's a pretty nice room that we're in, but it smells like death. There's this blood-stained altar. There's a body on it. The body's old, but there's fresh blood by the altar. And there's a dagger in the body on the altar. Now, Hug gets the dagger, and he gives it to me. Hug gives it to me. And we all perceive, like we all do a perception check. And I think I rolled a natural 20 in here. I rolled 2 natural 20s in this session. One, I think, on a perception check. I think it was here, and I know I get another one in an attack later. So let's see. There's a big block of obsidian, and it's basically blocking the passageway through to the next area. And there's writing on the altar that Gemdo knows because he's dwarf. He speaks dwarven, of course. And basically, this altar's saying we have to make a sacrifice. And the dagger glows and says, "One must die." Well, so this is where it gets weird for the rest of it, because everybody Tinkin and Hug are apparently telling me, especially Tinkin, they're basically telling me that they want me to die. They want me to sacrifice myself. And they're asking everybody around, like, will somebody sacrifice me? Because apparently I'm small, and I'm looking at the 2 smaller guys, like the goblin and the gnome. Like, wait. But since Tinkin's the person that's we're helping, well, this solidifies it for me. All right, if anybody's been listening, I have it in for Tinkin. I don't like guys like Tinkin. My character does not like guys like Tinkin, and so he is. I'm ready to take this guy out the whole time, but I'm still trying not to be a murder hobo completely. But they keep asking us to make the sacrifice, make me the sacrifice. So I at first I stabbed the corpse to see if it makes a sacrifice. Is it like symbolic? Is it just like, you have to put somebody up there, be willing to do it or whatever? Is this a, like the stupid story in the Bible, like Abraham and Isaac and shit, where he's like, kill your son. And, he's like, oh, wait, I was just kidding. I just needed to make sure you do it. Yeah, that's a real nice guy, that guy, But we see that the blood from the altar flows around it like it's like a magic power source. Think Hellboy. Like I was thinking about Hellboy, like when they in the beginning when they have the big scene and all the blood goes around and around and around. And I think they do it in a Blade movie too. It looks cool. Or like the House of the Dragon main titles where the blood's going all around. Um, I have a magic dagger, and we are stacking bodies like cordwood at this point because we go and we get one of the bodies from the other room, and we see if we can stab that. That doesn't work, and we go to invest the obsidian because we don't know how to get through this. Nobody's going to sacrifice somebody else to get through this room. And I want to also be clear that the entire time there's still pressure to just leave. They're just like, let's get out of here. This is a moral puzzle. Let's go. But we're sticking to it. And in this obsidian, after I looking into it, I see a twisted version of myself. And it says to me, one must die. Well, seeing a version of myself looking at me with malicious intent, kind of, and with my something in my backstory, I freak out and I run out of the room. Start running back towards where we came in a little bit. I should also mention that there are two, as I leave to the right, there's another way, another passageway that we're going to look at in a second. Well, Hug keeps insisting about dying. So I go check out the second passage while I'm out of that room. And in there, I see a big golem who's missing a hand. It turns out that that hand is the same one that Hug has been walking around with this whole time. I don't think I mentioned that Hug had a hand that he was holding, but he did, and this is it. It's a dwarf-sized golem, and it's just chiseling on its own, doing its own thing. Like, I believe all of these are under somebody's influence at somehow, or they're just kind of trapped in their loop from whatever time they were down there, and they're just still doing their job. And I imagine a golem, not being alive, would just keep going until it would fall apart. And honestly, nothing comes of this, and it was kind of a bummer. I feel like I wish we could have figured out a way to get this going, but to maybe help us, I don't know. But can't always do everything. Um, Now Harden casts Unseen Servant. Okay, it's a first level spell. It's range is 60 feet, lasts an hour. It's a conjuration. Damage effect is control. This spell creates an invisible, mindless, shapeless medium force that performs simple tasks at your command until the spell ends. The servant springs into existence in an unoccupied space on the ground within range. It has an AC of 10, 1 hit point, and a strength of 2, and it can't attack. If it drops to 0 hit points, the spell ends. You can mentally command the servant to move up to 15 feet and interact with an object. The servant can perform simple tasks that a human servant could do, such as fetching things, cleaning, mending, folding clothes, lighting fires, serving food, pouring wine. Once you give the command, the servant performs the task to the best of its ability until it completes the task, then waits for your next command. If you command the servant to perform a task that would move it more than 60 feet away from you, the spell ends. So basically, like a Mr. Meeseeks, except it doesn't just go away unless it dies. But since it has almost no hit points, it'll just go away quickly. So he uses that, and he basically tries to sacrifice the unseen servant on an altar. The altar lights up, and Tinkin kills it. It doesn't do anything though. And while I'm out of the room, Tinkin kills. Well, I think I come back into the room now, but Tinkin. I think I don't know. I can't remember if we were in the room or out of the room, but Tinkin kills and sacrifices Hug. And when he does that, the black obsidian moves. I lunged at Tinkin to grapple him, But when Gemdo saw the obsidian open, he just goes. And in fear of this thing closing up on us, I move off of Tinkin from instead of grappling him and just follow him through the next area because I'm like, all right, I'm going to take care of this guy later. We got to go. We got to move forward. We go in there and we find two cultists kind of not paying attention to us. And I get on a ledge, and Morvis and I sneak attack these dudes for 7 and 6 damage. Hardin once again uses Vicious Mockery and kills one of the cultists. And I get I think he says nat 20 to kill cultists. So yeah, that was me. I get a natural 20 to kill the cultists. Ziggy uses Toll the Dead and succeeds. Gets 6 damage. Morsfit uses Ray of Sickness. He rolls a 22. And a lot. Oh yes, kills the original fight instigator in this instant. The guy who came out from behind the basket to start all this. Tinkin follows this guy Shev after he catches this false gem that Gemdo throws at him. He's like, "Yeah, we got the gem," and he creates this false gem and he throws it at him. I go back in to try to find Hug's body. Like I want to look at Hug's body. I want to see what happened, and then I want to see if he's got anything on him. But I'm also just mad because I Hug and I kind of developed a little rapport in the cave, and I was a little pissed off that this guy just killed him. But also I think it has to do with what I've been through as the character, like what the character's been through. And he goes in there and Hug's body is gone. And this is where we get to like a puzzle where it's dwarven writing on the door, and it has all these dwarven kings' names on them. There is a trap on the door, but I can't really disarm it. But the trap is connected to the door. So basically, if we screw up one of these puzzles, there'll be some kind of consequences. And after some looking around and finding all these murals and investigating them, where they have each mural that we find has 2 of these dwarven kings with a specific kind of weapon. 2 of them are carrying axes. 2 of them have swords. 2 of them have something. I can't remember what the other 2 have. And then there's like a big picture with all of them. And through all this, we find scrambled letters that turn into the words unlock. And so all we had to do was put the names in the right order. And it opens up and there's a bag. There's these little worms that we kill. We really didn't have to. It's barely an initiative thing. They were just tiny. They took it out not to nothing. Should also be brought up that we did get to level 2. Everybody rolled. I don't know what everybody else rolled for theirs, but I'm now up to from 10 to 15 hit points. And I have cunning action now, which allows me to hide, dash, and disengage. So when the door opens up, there's this dead dwarf named Damas who Gemdo is having none of this guy. He's like, "Would you like to do?" And Gemdo fires a magic missile once at him for 15 points, and he does it again for 30, and he does it again for 36 points. So he's given this guy every time he's trying to talk, Gemdo just fires on him. But our DM decided that that's enough of that, and the 3 cultists, including Shev, disappear. Like he starts asking questions about, like, what are you looking for here? Pardon me. And Shev and those guys and Tinkin after that all get teleported out. But Tinkin kind of comes out from behind where he's finds a magical dodecahedron, which, if you're playing Baldur's Gate, that's a very familiar sounding thing. And there's another side room where there was like apparently like this guy I think had a black dragon at one point, and I was like, oh shit, I think, are we about to fight a dragon? But he hadn't fed it in 500 years, so we don't have to worry about a dead dragon. But in this, eventually, like, it's just done. We don't do anything. We don't like. We find this bag with a sword halfway in it. We also find mithril scale armor, a cloak of elven kind, a rapier of initiative, and a shield of missile attraction. So some of this stuff is no good. Like the missile attraction thing is like a cursed item. But it's not the best stuff. But what we do find is that the bag that we have is a bag of devouring. We had a quiver, but when we put the quiver inside the bag, it was eaten, or well, basically, it sends it to another plane. So we're down the quiver, but we did get a few other things. Yeah, that's what we got. We do find that where there's this like claw marks, there's like a hole, and we follow that up and out. So we are now out of the cave, kind of like we talked about how in Skyrim there's like the entrance right by the exit, but you just can't get to it, and you pop out and you're like basically back at the beginning. That kind of fell to this like hole. We come out and we're like outside and we're near the swamp that we went around to avoid going through it to get to this cave. And that's basically where it ends. I don't know if we decided if we had gone back to town yet or not. Tinkin is out of there, I think, but I'm also want to clarify some of that stuff because near the end it just kind of like turns into like, like coming up on like where we're headed to do this, that, and the other. So when we do come back for session 5, which I'm not sure is next week or not, we'll come to those decisions and see what's going on, because I now, in retrospect, that bag of devouring, I would like to try something with that if I can. But if I can't, I will still tell you guys what I had planned to do with it. And maybe we'll do it for some other time. But I do have a plan for that. And I do have a plan for someone named Tinkin that I still, after him trying to get me killed, trying to get everybody to sacrifice me, this guy has solidified his limited time left on this earth. So we'll see what happens with all of that. Thanks for listening to this. I appreciate it. And if I explained one of the spells twice on here, I apologize, because the pause button and my computer are a little touchy apparently this morning. So have a good one. Thanks for listening. If you like this, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Bye.